The massive space station hung in the darkness like a glittering jewel. Nexus Prime Station was the size of a small moon, home to the Galactic Council. Ships from 47 different worlds docked at its countless ports every day. Today was special. Today was the day humans would show their weapons to the galaxy. Captain Lee Dae-ho stood in the waiting room outside the Great Council chamber. His black uniform was clean and pressed. The weapon case beside him looked small compared to the huge alien devices being wheeled past. Other species brought cannons the size of cars. Some had weapons that glowed with strange light. Others carried devices that hummed with invisible energy. Lee Dae-ho looked at his simple metal case and smiled. Ambassador Park So-min walked over to him. She was nervous. This was only Earth's second year in the Galactic Council. The first year had been rough. Many alien species looked down on humans. They thought Earth was primitive and backward. "Are you ready for this?" Park So-min asked. She smoothed her blue diplomatic robes. "The whole galaxy will be watching." "I'm ready," Lee Dae-ho said. He patted his weapon case. Dr. Kim Tae-woo spent years perfecting this design. It may look simple, but it works. Dr. Kim Tae-woo hurried over to them. He was a thin man with thick glasses. His hands were always moving, checking calculations on his tablet. "I've run the numbers 50 times, he said. "The kinetic force calculations are perfect. The electromagnetic acceleration is flawless. This weapon will surprise them." Through the huge windows, they could see the council chamber. It was enormous. Thousands of seats rose up in circles around a central platform. Representatives from every species in the galaxy sat waiting. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of living crystal. A few appeared to be walking trees. The announcer's voice echoed through the station. "Now presenting the Zephyrian Republic's latest energy cannon." A tall, crystal-like being walked onto the platform. Councillor Vextar's body caught the light and threw rainbows across the chamber. Behind him, assistants wheeled out a cannon that sparkled like a diamond. It was beautiful and clearly very advanced. "Behold the Stellar Annihilator Mark 7, Vextar announced. His voice sounded like singing crystal. "This weapon can destroy a small moon with a single shot. It converts quantum energy into pure destruction." The weapon fired at a test target. A beam of brilliant light shot out and completely vaporized a chunk of asteroid. The crowd cheered. Alien representatives clapped and made various sounds of approval. Next came the Kreknari Empire. General Morden stomped onto the platform. He was huge, with 4 muscular arms and dark green skin. His people were warriors who loved to fight. "The Kreknari present the Plasma Storm Rifle," Morden roared. His voice was like thunder. "It fires superheated matter at the speed of light. Nothing can survive its fury." The demonstration was impressive. The plasma weapon melted through several layers of the strongest metal known to science. The weapon glowed red-hot after firing, crackling with dangerous energy. Species after species showed their weapons. The Chitani brought bioweapons that ate through steel. The Altarians displayed quantum disruptors that could tear apart atoms. Each weapon was more advanced and deadly than the last. Finally, the announcer called, "The Terran Federation will now present their military technology." The chamber fell quiet. Many aliens leaned forward in their seats. Humans were still new to the galaxy. Most species were curious about what these primitive people might have created. Lee Dae-ho walked onto the platform. He carried only his simple metal case. No assistants followed him. No huge machines rolled behind him. He looked very small and alone in the enormous chamber. He opened the case and pulled out his weapon. It looked like an ordinary rifle, just bigger and heavier. The metal was dark and functional. There were no glowing parts or crystal components. It appeared to be made from simple steel and electronics. A ripple of laughter started in the audience. Some aliens pointed at the weapon. Others made sounds that were clearly amusement in their languages. Councillor Vexitar's crystal body flashed with bright colors. This meant he was highly amused. "Is that some sort of chemical propulsion device?" he asked. His voice carried easily through the chamber. "How wonderfully primitive." General Morden's laugh was like an earthquake. "Your species still throws rocks at enemies?" "We stopped using kinetic weapons 1,000,000 years ago." "How did you people even reach space?" Dr. Kim Tae-woo stepped forward to explain. "This is a rail-assisted kinetic rifle," he said. "It uses electromagnetic fields to accelerate projectiles to extreme velocities. The ammunition is made from depleted uranium for maximum density and penetration." The laughter grew louder. An insect-like being clicked in amusement. "Electromagnetic acceleration of solid matter. What's next using fire to cook food? It's basically throwing rocks, but with extra steps, called out another alien. Lee Dae-ho remained calm. He had expected this reaction. Would you like to see a demonstration? He asked. Oh, please, yes, Vextar said. His crystal body was now flashing rapidly with amusement. Show us how your ancient technology works. They brought out a test target made of standard military armor. It was the same material used to protect spacecraft across the galaxy. Lee Dae-ho raised his rifle and took aim. The weapon made a low humming sound as it charged. He pulled the trigger. There was no flash of light or beam of energy. No dramatic explosion or colorful display. Just a sharp crack of sound as the projectile broke the sound barrier. The target simply disappeared. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. Only a cloud of metallic dust remained. The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then the laughter started again, even louder than before. Did you see that? General Mordon said. It completely destroyed the target by hitting it really hard. How sophisticated. My children play with toys that work the same way, added a tree-like being, though theirs are probably more advanced. Ambassador Park So-min felt her face burn with embarrassment. This was worse than she had feared. The entire galaxy was laughing at Earth's military technology. Counselor Vexitar stood up in his seat. I move that we classify Terran weapons technology as primitive class, he announced. Clearly this species is not ready for real military operations. Seconded, roared General Morden. They can barely defend themselves, let alone help defend the galaxy. The vote was swift and unanimous. Every species agreed. Earth's weapons were officially labeled as primitive and useless. Humans would not be allowed to participate in any military operations. They could only serve in support roles far from any real fighting. As the session ended, aliens filed out of the chamber, still chuckling and making jokes about human weapons. Many made crude gestures at Lee Dae-ho as they passed. Throwing rocks with electromagnetic assistance, one alien said to another. What will these primitives think of next? Lee Dae-ho packed his rifle back into its case. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes were hard. Dr. Kim Tae-woo looked crushed. All his years of work had been dismissed as a joke. Ambassador Park So-min tried to maintain her diplomatic composure, but she was clearly upset. I'm sorry, she said. I know how much work you put into that weapon. Don't be sorry, Lee Dae-ho said quietly. They'll understand soon enough. Dr. Kim Tae-woo looked up from his calculations. The numbers don't lie, he said. Kinetic energy is kinetic energy. Physics doesn't care how advanced you think you are. As they left the chamber, none of them knew that within 3 months, those same aliens would be begging for human help. The galaxy was about to face an enemy that would make them remember why kinetic weapons had ruled battlefields for millions of years. The Void Swarm was coming. 3 months had passed since the humiliating weapons demonstration. Life on Nexus Prime Station had settled into a routine for the human delegation. Ambassador Park So-min attended council meetings where Earth's opinions were politely ignored. Dr. Kim Tae-woo worked alone in his small laboratory, continuing his research that nobody seemed to care about. Captain Lee Dae-ho spent his time training with Commander Yoon-ji-hai in the station's practice ranges. She was Earth's best marksman, a woman who could hit targets others couldn't even see. Her rifle was a work of art, custom built by Dr. Kim Tae-woo himself. How are the aliens treating you? Lee Dae-ho asked as they finished their daily practice session. Yoon-ji-hee shrugged. They don't treat me at all. Most of them forget I exist. The few who remember me think I'm some kind of primitive hunter. Tech specialist Han Min-soo looked up from the armor he was maintaining. At least they don't laugh at your face anymore. I heard Counselor Vextar telling jokes about human weapons at the diplomatic dinner last night. Lee Dae-ho frowned but said nothing. He had learned to ignore the constant mockery. Let them laugh, he thought. Pride comes before the fall. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning. The emergency alarm started screaming throughout Nexus Prime Station. Red lights flashed in every corridor. The announcement system crackled to life with urgent messages in dozens of alien languages. Ambassador Park So-min was in her office when the emergency call came through. All council members report to the emergency session immediately. Priority Alpha. This is not a drill. The council chamber was in chaos when she arrived. Alien representatives were shouting at each other in panic. Holographic displays showed star maps with red warning indicators spreading across entire sectors of space. Admiral Kethmal of the Altarian fleet stood at the center platform. His usually bright bioluminescent patches were dim with worry. "The situation is grave," he announced. 3 star systems have gone completely dark in the past 48 hours. A hologram appeared showing the affected area. Where once there had been planets, space stations, and busy trade routes, now there was only empty space and debris. "What could cause such destruction?" asked a nervous insect-like representative. "We sent scout ships to investigate," Admiral Kethmal continued. "Only one returned. The pilot was barely alive. Before he died, he managed to send us this recording." The hologram changed to show shaky footage from a spaceship's camera. In the distance, something was moving through space. It looked like a swarm of metallic insects, each one the size of a small ship. There were millions of them, flowing through space like a dark river. "The Void Swarm," Admiral Kethmal said grimly. "We thought they were just legends, stories told to frighten children. But they're real, and they're coming." Counselor Vextar's crystal body flashed with alarm colors. "What do we know about them?" "Very little," the Admiral admitted. "Ancient records say they appeared from dark space billions of years ago. They consumed entire civilizations before disappearing again. They seem to be some kind of cybernetic life form, part machine, part living creature." General Morden slammed one of his 4 fists on his seat. "Then we fight them. The combined fleets of the galaxy can stop any enemy." "It's not that simple," Admiral Kethmal said. "The scout ship's readings showed something troubling. These creatures seem to adapt to whatever weapons are used against them. They learn and evolve in real time." The chamber fell silent as this news sank in. An enemy that could adapt to their weapons would be almost impossible to defeat using conventional tactics. "How long before they reach core galaxy systems?" asked Ambassador Park So-min. Admiral Kethmal consulted his displays. "At their current speed, they'll reach the outer colonies in 2 weeks. Core systems, including Earth, in 6 weeks. The planning began immediately. Every major military power offered their best ships and weapons. The Zephyrians would bring their energy cannons. The Kraknari promised their plasma rifles. The Chitani offered their bioweapons. It would be the largest fleet ever assembled." Admiral Kethmal outlined the battle plan. "We'll meet them at the Kepler 442 system. It's far enough from inhabited worlds that we can use our most powerful weapons without risking civilian casualties." "What about the humans?" asked one representative. General Morden laughed. "What about them? They have nothing to contribute except their primitive rock throwers." "Perhaps they could serve as support crew," suggested Admiral Kethmal. "Every ship needs maintenance personnel and supply handlers." Ambassador Park So-min stood up. "Earth requests permission to send combat personnel as part of the fleet." The chamber erupted in laughter again. Several aliens made the same jokes they had made months earlier about human weapons. "Combat personnel?" Counselor Vextar's crystal body flashed with amusement. "What would you fight with? Are you planning to throw stones at the Void Swarm? Our people are ready to fight alongside the galaxy's finest," Park So-min insisted. "We may not have energy weapons, but we have courage and determination." General Morden wiped tears from his eyes. "Courage is admirable, but useless against an enemy that can adapt to energy weapons in seconds. What good are kinetic weapons against creatures from the void of space?" "Please," Park So-min said. "Let us prove ourselves. Give us a chance to fight for our galaxy." Admiral Kethmal considered this. The humans had been persistent, and they deserved some chance to defend their own world. "Very well. You may send a small team as observers. They can handle logistics and communication duties aboard my flagship." "Observers?" Park So-min felt insulted, but she knew this was the best offer they would get. "Thank you, Admiral. We accept." The meeting continued for hours as military leaders planned their strategy. They would use overwhelming firepower to destroy the Void Swarm before it could adapt to their weapons. Speed and coordination would be key. Captain Lee Dae-ho, Commander Yoon Ji-hai, Dr. Kim Tae-woo, and tech specialist Han Min-soo were selected for the mission. As the smallest delegation, they would have minimal impact if something went wrong. That evening, they gathered in Dr. Kim Tae-woo's laboratory to prepare their equipment. The scientist was making final adjustments to several experimental weapons. "Are you sure about these modifications?" Han Min-soo asked, examining a rifle that looked much larger and more complex than the standard model. "The math is solid," Dr. Kim Tae-woo replied. "I've increased the electromagnetic acceleration by 40%. The projectiles will hit with enough kinetic energy to punch through anything." Commander Yoon-ji Hai tested the balance of her modified rifle. It feels good. What about ammunition? I've prepared several different types, Dr. Kim Tae-woo said. Depleted uranium for armor penetration, tungsten for maximum kinetic transfer, some experimental rounds with explosive cores. Lee Dae-ho picked up one of the larger weapons. This one looks different. That's my masterpiece, Dr. Kim Tae-woo said proudly. I call it Sledgehammer. It's a portable rail cannon that can fire tungsten rods at nearly the speed of light. The kinetic energy is incredible. Will it work against the Void Swarm? Han Min-soo asked. Dr. Kim Tae-woo adjusted his glasses. Energy can be absorbed or redirected. But kinetic force is fundamental physics. You can't adapt to momentum itself. 2 days later, the Great Fleet assembled at the edge of the galaxy. Thousands of ships from dozens of worlds gathered in formation. Energy weapons charged their capacitors. Plasma cannons ran system checks. Bioweapons were prepared for deployment. The human team stood on the bridge of Admiral Kethamol's flagship, feeling very small and out of place. Around them, alien officers prepared for the battle of their lives. Remember, Admiral Kethamol told his crew, the Void Swarm adapts quickly. We'll get one good shot with each weapon type before they learn to counter it. Make every shot count. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading for their date with destiny. As they traveled through the swirling colors of faster-than-light space, Captain Lee Dae-ho checked his equipment one more time. In a few hours, they would face an enemy that had destroyed civilizations. The galaxy's most advanced weapons would be put to the ultimate test. The humans were ready with their simple, primitive kinetic weapons. Soon the galaxy would learn that sometimes the oldest solutions are the best solutions. The Kepler 442 system had once been a quiet place. A small yellow star with a few rocky planets and some asteroid belts. Nothing special. Today it would become the site of the greatest battle in galactic history. The combined fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Thousands of ships spread across space like a metal constellation. Admiral Kethamol's flagship, the Radiant Dawn, took position at the center of the formation. Around it, the galaxy's finest warships prepared for combat. Captain Lee Dae-ho stood on the bridge, watching the tactical displays. The human team had been given a small corner where they wouldn't get in the way. Most of the alien officers ignored them completely. Sensors detect massive movement in the outer system, reported the Altarian sensor officer. Her bioluminescent patches flickered with concentration. Something big is coming. Admiral Kethamol studied the readings. How big? Approximately 10 million individual contacts, the officer said, all moving in coordinated formation. The main screen shifted to show the edge of the star system. At first, there was nothing visible except stars and empty space. Then something appeared that made everyone on the bridge fall silent. It looked like a living shadow flowing through space. Millions of dark shapes moved together like a school of fish. But each individual was the size of a small warship. They moved with perfect coordination, turning and flowing as one massive organism. By the ancient gods, whispered Admiral Kethamol, there are so many of them. Chief Warrant Officer Choi Sang-wook, the human explosives expert, studied the enemy formation through his binoculars. They're not flying randomly, he observed. There's a pattern to their movement. Intelligence. Lieutenant Na Eun-ji, the human communications officer, was monitoring all frequencies. I'm picking up signals between them, she reported. It sounds like they're talking to each other. As the Void Swarm approached, individual ships became visible. They were unlike anything in the galactic databases. Each ship seemed to be part machine and part living creature. Dark metal hulls rippled like muscle. Weapon ports opened and closed like breathing. They looked alive. All ships prepare for combat, Admiral Kethamol commanded. Energy weapons to full charge. Target the largest concentrations. Across the fleet, thousands of weapons came online. The Zephyrian energy cannons glowed with stored power. Kraknari plasma rifles heated to dangerous temperatures. Chaitani bioweapons writhed in their containment systems. Remember the plan? General Morden's voice came over the communication system. Hit them hard and fast before they can adapt. Show them the power of galactic civilization. The Void Swarm continued to approach. As they got closer, more details became visible. The individual ships were covered in sensors and weapons. Strange growths extended from their hulls like cybernetic tentacles. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to be watching the galactic fleet with obvious intelligence. Fire, Admiral Kethamol commanded. The first volley was magnificent. Thousands of energy weapons fired at once, filling space with brilliant beams of light. Quantum disruptors tore at the fabric of space itself. Plasma bolts streaked across the void like falling stars. The display was beautiful and terrible. The beams struck the void swarm formation and everything seemed to work perfectly. Dozens of enemy ships exploded in brilliant fireballs. The aliens cheered as their weapons found their targets. Then something impossible happened. The destroyed void swarm ships began to rebuild themselves. The explosions reversed, pulling debris back together. Within seconds, the ships were whole again. But now they looked different. Their hulls had changed color and texture. "What just happened?" demanded Admiral Kethmol. "Impossible readings," reported the sensor officer. "They absorbed the energy from our weapons and used it to regenerate. The second volley fired immediately. This time, the energy beams simply disappeared when they hit the void swarm ships. The alien vessels absorbed every joule of energy without taking any damage. They've adapted," Dr. Kim Tae-woo said quietly, just like Admiral Kethmol warned. Counselor Vextar was on the bridge communication system, his crystal voice filled with panic. "Our energy cannons are useless. They're absorbing everything we throw at them." The void swarm began to return fire. Strange weapons emerged from their ships, firing beams of dark energy that seemed to eat light itself. When these beams hit galactic ships, the results were devastating. Hull armor simply disappeared. Energy shields collapsed instantly. "Shields down to 60%, reported the defensive officer. "Their weapons are draining our power systems." General Morden's voice came over the communication system, no longer confident. "Plasma weapons are ineffective. They're turning our own shots back at us." The battle turned into a nightmare. Every energy weapon the galaxy possessed was either absorbed or redirected back at them. The void swarm ships grew larger and more powerful with each attack, feeding on the galactic fleet's energy. Ships began to explode around them. The beautiful Zephyrian cruisers cracked like broken crystal. Kraknari battleships melted under returned plasma fire. The massive Chitani bioships were consumed by their own weapons. "We're losing," Admiral Kethemol said grimly. "All ships begin tactical withdrawal." "No." Commander Yoon Ji-hai suddenly spoke up. Everyone on the bridge turned to look at the human woman. "Request permission to engage the enemy." Admiral Kethmol stared at her. "With what? Your primitive kinetic weapons?" "Yes," Captain Lee Daeho said, stepping forward. "Our weapons don't use energy. They can't be absorbed or redirected. Are you insane?" General Morden's voice crackled over the communication system. "This is no time for your stone-throwing games." Dr. Kim Tae-woo pulled out his tablet, showing calculations to Admiral Kethmol. "Sir, our weapons operate on kinetic principles. They can't adapt to basic physics." "This is desperate madness," Counselor Vextar said, "but we're already losing." "Let them try." Admiral Kethmol looked around his bridge. Half his ships were destroyed or disabled. The enemy was advancing rapidly. His most advanced weapons were useless. "Fine," he said, "but stay out of our way when you fail." Tech specialist Han Min-soo activated hidden weapon systems throughout the ship. Dr. Kim Tae-woo had secretly installed kinetic weapons in empty cargo holds. Now panels slid away to reveal railgun batteries. Commander Yoon Ji-hai moved to the observation deck with her rifle. The weapon looked ancient compared to the advanced alien technology around her, but it was built with precision and care. Lieutenant Na Yoon-ji began coordinating targeting data with Chief Warrant Officer Choi Sang-wook. "I have firing solutions on 12 enemy vessels," she reported. "Let me pick the first target," Commander Yoon Ji-hee said. She looked through her scope at a void swarm destroyer that was approaching a damaged Zephyrian cruiser. The enemy ship's hull was rippling with absorbed energy. "Firing," she said calmly. The rifle made a sharp crack as the depleted uranium projectile left the barrel. There was no flash of light or energy beam, just a small piece of metal traveling at incredible speed. The projectile hit the void swarm ship and punched completely through it. The enemy vessel didn't absorb the impact or redirect it. The kinetic energy tore through its hull like paper, creating a massive hole that vented atmosphere and debris. The void swarm ship exploded. Silence filled the bridge. Every alien eye turned to stare at Commander Yoon Ji-hai. "Impossible," whispered Admiral Kethmol. "That ship had maximum adaptive shielding." Dr. Kim Tae-woo brought the railgun batteries online. "Shielding designed to handle energy weapons," he explained. "Not solid projectiles traveling at significant fractions of light speed. The hidden weapons fired in sequence. Tungsten rods accelerated by electromagnetic fields hammered into the void swarm formation. Each projectile carried enormous kinetic energy that couldn't be absorbed or redirected. The enemy ships were designed to handle energy, not momentum. Void swarm vessels began exploding throughout their formation. Their adaptive hulls, so effective against energy weapons, offered no protection against simple kinetic force. "It's working," Admiral Kethmal said in amazement. "Their primitive weapons are actually working." Captain Lee Dae-ho activated his own rifle. "Physics doesn't care how advanced you think you are," he said. "Mass times velocity equals momentum. That's been true for billions of years." The tide of battle was starting to turn. The galactic fleet was in chaos. Ships burned and drifted helplessly through space as the void swarm pressed their attack. Admiral Kethmal's flagship shuddered under enemy fire, its shields failing rapidly. "Hull breach on Deck 7. Reported a panicked officer. "Life support is failing in sections 12 through 15. Sergeant Major Lim Jae-sung led his human squad through the ship's corridors, carrying portable kinetic weapons to defensive positions. Behind him, Specialist Kang Yuri loaded ammunition with practiced efficiency. "Where do you want these rail cannons?" Lim Jae-sung asked Dr. Kim Tae-woo over the communication system. "Anywhere you can get a clear shot at the enemy," the scientist replied. "We need every weapon firing." On the bridge, Admiral Kethmal watched his fleet being destroyed. The tactical display showed red symbols everywhere as ships were lost to the enemy's adapted weapons. "We've lost 30% of our forces," he announced grimly. "The humans are requesting more firing positions," reported the tactical officer. Her bioluminescent patches were dim with exhaustion and fear. General Morden's voice came over the communication system, but now it was filled with desperation instead of arrogance. "The Kreknari fleet is falling back. Our plasma weapons are worse than useless. The enemy is using our own energy against us." Counselor Vexitar's crystal voice was cracking with strain. "The Zephyrian formation is broken. We need immediate assistance." Commander Yoon Ji-hai took aim at another enemy target. A massive void swarm cruiser was moving toward a group of damaged alien ships. The creature ship's hull rippled with absorbed energy from previous attacks. She pulled the trigger. The kinetic round punched through the enemy vessel's adaptive armor and detonated inside its core. The explosion lit up space as internal systems overloaded. "Another hit," she reported calmly. Dr. Kim Tae-woo was coordinating the hidden railgun batteries throughout the ship. "Firing solutions confirmed on targets 7 through 15, he announced. "All weapons fire." The kinetic barrage struck the void swarm formation like invisible hammers. Each tungsten projectile carried enormous momentum that the enemy could not absorb or redirect. Ships that had easily survived energy weapon attacks were torn apart by simple kinetic force. "How is this possible?" Admiral Kethmal asked, watching the tactical display. "Your weapons are destroying enemies that our most advanced technology cannot touch." Tech specialist Han Min-soo looked up from his targeting computer. "Energy can be manipulated," he explained. "But momentum is a fundamental force. You can't adapt to the laws of physics." Captain Lee Dae-ho moved to a firing position near the bridge. Through the transparent aluminum window, he could see the enemy formation clearly. The void swarm ships were beautiful in their own terrible way, like living works of dark art. "They're trying to surround us," he observed. "If they complete that maneuver, they'll be able to focus all their adapted weapons on the flagship." Lieutenant Na Eun-ji was monitoring enemy communications. "I'm detecting increased signal traffic between them," she reported. "They're coordinating for a major attack. Can they adapt to our kinetic weapons?" asked Admiral Kethmal. Dr. Kim Tae-woo shook his head. "How do you adapt to being hit by a chunk of metal moving at 10% the speed of light? It's like trying to adapt to gravity. Some things are just fundamental forces." Sergeant Major Lim Jae-sung's voice came over the communication system from his firing position. "We need heavier weapons out here. The smaller enemy ships are starting to group together." "Specialist Kang Yuri, prepare the experimental ammunition," Dr. Kim Tae-woo ordered. "The explosive core rounds." "Ready to fire," came the reply. The new ammunition was Dr. Kim Tae-woo's latest innovation. Each round contained a small explosive charge that detonated after the kinetic impact. The combination of momentum and explosion was devastating. Commander Yoon Ji-hai loaded one of the experimental rounds into her rifle. Her target was a cluster of smaller void swarm ships that were protecting a larger vessel. She aimed carefully and fired. The round struck the lead ship and punched through its hull. Then it exploded inside, sending fragments flying in all directions. The fragments hit the surrounding ships with enough force to penetrate their adaptive armor. 5 enemy vessels were destroyed with a single shot. Incredible, whispered Admiral Kethamol. One round took out 5 targets. The Void Swarm began to change tactics. They started moving in more spread-out formations, trying to minimize the damage from kinetic weapons. But this made them vulnerable to the Galactic Fleet's remaining energy weapons. They're adapting their formations, observed Captain Lee Daeho, but they still can't adapt to kinetic force. Dr. Kim Tae-woo was making final preparations on his masterpiece weapon. Sledgehammer is ready, he announced. But I need a really big target. As if in response to his words, something enormous emerged from the Void Swarm formation. It was the size of a small moon, covered in weapons and armor. The massive vessel pulsed with dark energy as it absorbed power from smaller ships around it. Void Construct Alpha Prime, Lieutenant Na Eun-ji read from her translation computer. That's what they're calling it in their communications. It's their command ship, Admiral Kethamol realized. Destroy that, and the rest of the swarm might lose coordination. The massive enemy vessel began charging a weapon of incredible size. Energy readings spiked off the charts as power built up in its forward sections. It's preparing to fire at the fleet concentration, reported the sensor officer. If that weapon hits, it will destroy dozens of ships. All ships scatter, Admiral Kethamol ordered. Emergency evasive maneuvers. But it was too late. The Galactic Fleet was too close together and too damaged to escape quickly. The massive weapon would fire in seconds. Dr. Kim Tae-woo activated Sledgehammer. The weapon was his greatest achievement. A rail cannon that could accelerate projectiles to nearly the speed of light. I need a clear firing line to that command ship, he said. Captain Lee Dae-ho took control of the targeting system. I've got it. He lined up the crosshairs on the massive enemy vessel. For Earth. For the galaxy. Sledgehammer fired. The tungsten penetrator was invisible as it crossed space faster than any energy weapon could travel. It struck the Void Construct Alpha Prime with the force of a small asteroid. The impact was incredible. The massive ship's adaptive armor, designed to absorb and redirect energy, had no defense against pure kinetic force. The penetrator punched completely through the vessel from front to back, creating a hole several kilometers wide. Secondary explosions began as internal systems overloaded. The ship's stored energy, meant to power its massive weapon, erupted outward in a chain reaction. The explosion was so bright it temporarily blinded sensors across the battlefield. When the light faded, the Void Construct Alpha Prime was gone. Only expanding debris remained where the massive command ship had been. The effect on the Void Swarm was immediate. Without their command ship's coordination, the remaining vessels began to scatter. Their formation broke apart as individual ships fled in different directions. They're retreating, shouted the tactical officer. The swarm is breaking up. General Morden's voice came over the communication system, filled with amazement. The humans did it. Their primitive weapons saved us all. Counselor Vexitar's crystal voice was humble for the first time. We owe them our lives. All of us. Admiral Kethamol turned to Captain Lee Dae-ho with new respect in his eyes. How did you know it would work? Because we remembered something your people forgot, Lee Dae-ho replied. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution. Energy weapons are impressive, but momentum is forever. As the remaining Void Swarm ships fled into dark space, the Galactic Fleet began damage assessment. They had won, but at a terrible cost. Hundreds of ships were destroyed or damaged, but they had learned something important. Advanced technology wasn't always better technology. Sometimes the oldest weapons were the most effective weapons. The humans had proven themselves in the most decisive way possible. News of the human victory spread through the Galactic Fleet like wildfire. Ships that had lost their main weapons were calling for human tactical assistance. Species that had mocked Earth's technology were now begging to learn how kinetic weapons worked. Master Gunnery Sergeant Oh Hyun-woo led teams of human specialists from ship to ship, installing portable railgun systems. Everywhere they went, alien crews watched with amazement as the simple weapons were set up. It's just electromagnets and metal projectiles, Oh Hyun-woo explained to a group of Zephyrian engineers. Nothing fancy or complicated. The crystal being studied the weapon designs with obvious confusion. But where are the energy matrices? One asked. How does it store quantum power? It doesn't need to, Oh Hyun-woo replied. Kinetic energy comes from motion. We just accelerate the projectile and let physics do the rest. Corporal Seo Ji-won was providing reconnaissance data from the ship's sensors. She had trained for years to identify targets and calculate firing solutions. Her skills were now in high demand across the fleet. The remaining Void Swarm ships are regrouping near the outer asteroid belt. She reported to Admiral Kethamol. They're trying to establish a new formation. How many? The Admiral asked. Approximately 3 million individual vessels, COG-1 replied. Much smaller than the original force, but still dangerous. Admiral Kethamol studied the tactical display. The Void Swarm was adapting again, but this time they were changing their strategy instead of their technology. They had learned that energy weapons were useless, so they were staying out of range of the Galactic Fleet's kinetic weapons. They're keeping their distance, he observed. They know we can hurt them now. Dr. Kim Tae-woo was in his temporary workshop, making modifications to Sledgehammer. The massive rail cannon had proven devastating against the enemy command ship, but he wanted to improve its range and accuracy. The projectile velocity is already near relativistic speeds, he muttered to himself, checking calculations on his tablet. But if I can increase the electromagnetic field strength... Captain Lee Dae-ho entered the workshop. How long until you can fire again? Sledgehammer needs 4 hours to recharge, Dr. Kim Tae-woo replied. The energy requirements are enormous, but I'm working on a solution. He showed Lee Dae-ho his latest innovation, multiple smaller rail cannons working together. Each one fires a tungsten rod in sequence. The combined kinetic energy should be equivalent to one large shot, but with much faster recharge time. Tech specialist Han Min-soo was coordinating with alien engineers throughout the fleet. They were trying to retrofit energy weapons to fire solid projectiles instead of energy beams. It's not working, reported a frustrated Kreknari engineer. Our plasma rifles can't accelerate solid matter. The magnetic fields are all wrong. That's because you're thinking about it backwards, Han Min-soo explained. You don't modify energy weapons to fire projectiles. You build projectile weapons from scratch. Commander Yoon Ji-hai had become something of a celebrity among the alien crews. Word had spread that she was the first person to successfully destroy a Void Swarm ship. Everywhere she went, aliens asked her to demonstrate her shooting skills. It's not magic, she told a group of young Altarian officers. It's just practice and understanding your weapon. You have to know where your shot will go before you pull the trigger, she demonstrated with her rifle, firing at a piece of debris floating in space. The projectile hit exactly where she aimed, sending the metal fragment spinning away. How did you calculate the trajectory so quickly? Asked one of the officers. Experience, Yoon Ji-hai replied. I've been shooting since I was a child. My father taught me that every shot tells a story. You just have to learn how to read it. High Counselor Zarthak, the eldest member of the Galactic Council, arrived on Admiral Kethamol's flagship to personally witness the human weapons in action. He was ancient even by galactic standards, having lived for over 2,000 years. I have seen many wars, he told Ambassador Park So-min. I watched civilizations rise and fall. I thought I had seen every type of weapon possible. And now? Park So-min asked. Now I realize that we forgot the most important lesson of warfare. The High Counselor replied. Simplicity is often more effective than complexity. He watched as human specialists demonstrated their weapons to fascinated alien crews. Your people have reminded us that technology should serve strategy, not the other way around. The final assault on the Void Swarm began at dawn. Ship time. Dr. Kim Tae-woo's multiple rail cannon array was ready. Across the fleet, newly installed kinetic weapons were charged and aimed. All ships report ready, Admiral Kethamol announced. Human tactical teams have confirmed targeting solutions. Corporal Seo Ji-won provided the final reconnaissance update. Enemy formation is holding position near the large asteroid cluster. They're using the rocks as cover. That won't help them, Captain Lee Dae-ho said grimly. Kinetic weapons don't care about cover. We'll just shoot through it. The attack began with a massive kinetic barrage. Hundreds of rail cannons fired simultaneously, sending tungsten projectiles screaming through space. The asteroids the Void Swarm was hiding behind exploded into fragments as the rounds punched through them. Enemy ships tried to scatter, but the humans had learned their movement patterns. Master Gunnery Sergeant Oh Hyun-woo coordinated overlapping fields of fire that caught the fleeing vessels in deadly crossfires. Target the larger ships first, he ordered. Force them to break formation. Commander Yoon Ji-hai took aim at what appeared to be a new command vessel. It was smaller than the previous one, but heavily armored. She loaded one of Dr. Kim Tae-woo's experimental explosive rounds. "Firing," she announced. The round struck the enemy ship and detonated inside its hull. The explosion triggered a chain reaction that spread to nearby vessels. Within seconds, an entire section of the Void Swarm formation was destroyed. Dr. Kim Tae-woo's multiple rail cannon array fired in sequence. Tungsten rods flew through space like a metal storm, each one carrying enough kinetic energy to destroy a small ship. The coordinated barrage devastated the enemy formation. "They're breaking," reported the sensor officer. "The swarm is scattering in all directions." The remaining Void Swarm ships abandoned any attempt at organized resistance. They fled toward the edge of the star system, desperate to escape the kinetic weapons that they could not adapt to counter. "Pursue and destroy," ordered Admiral Kethmol. "Don't let any of them escape to threaten other systems." The hunt continued for 6 hours as the Galactic Fleet chased down fleeing enemy vessels. Human weapons teams worked around the clock, their kinetic weapons proving devastatingly effective against the scattered foes. When the last Void Swarm ship was destroyed, Admiral Kethmol called for a fleet-wide communication. Every ship in the massive formation listened as he spoke. "Today we learned an important lesson," he began. "Advanced technology is not always superior technology. The humans have shown us that sometimes the oldest solutions are the best solutions." High Counselor Zarthak took over the communication. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally apologize to the Terran Federation. We judged your weapons by their appearance rather than their effectiveness." Counselor Vextar's crystal voice came over the communication system, humble and respectful. "We called your weapons primitive. We were wrong. There is nothing primitive about effectiveness." General Mordun added his own apology. "I said your people were throwing rocks with extra steps. Now I understand that sometimes rocks are exactly what you need." The fleet returned to Nexus Prime Station as heroes. The victory celebration lasted for 3 days. Every species wanted to thank the humans who had saved the galaxy, but the most important changes happened in the weeks that followed. The Galactic Council officially reclassified human weapons technology as historically effective and granted Earth full military partnership status. More significantly, they established joint training programs where alien forces would learn kinetic warfare from human instructors. Dr. Kim Tae-woo found himself in charge of a new research facility where human and alien scientists worked together to develop hybrid weapons that combined the best of both technologies. Commander Yoon Ji-hai became the head of the Galactic Marksmanship Academy, teaching precision shooting to representatives from every species in the galaxy. Captain Lee Dae-ho was promoted to general and put in charge of galactic defense planning. His first order was to ensure that every major fleet included kinetic weapons as backup systems. "Energy weapons are impressive," he told the council during his first strategic briefing, "but they can be countered. Kinetic weapons are reliable because they use the most basic forces in the universe." Ambassador Park So-min smiled as she watched the transformation. In just a few months, humanity had gone from being the galaxy's outcasts to being its teachers. "How does it feel?" Admiral Kethmol asked her during a diplomatic reception. "Satisfying," she replied, "but also humbling. We didn't save the galaxy with advanced technology. We saved it by remembering that simple solutions often work best." Tech specialist Han Min-soo was training alien engineers on kinetic weapon maintenance. "The key is reliability," he explained. "These weapons don't have exotic particles or quantum matrices that can fail. They're just metal and electromagnets. They work in any environment,